and welcome to the Passenger Seat Podcast, a podcast designed to fill your passenger seat with a chat about classic cars, all recorded from my 1968 Morris Minor Peggy. I'm Becca, and today I'm just taking Peggy out for a drive because I've not actually been out in her this week. I'm working from home for the beginning of January, and so it's meant that she's kind of been tucked away for the week, and I just really missed it. So I wanted to get out and give her a bit of a run, and also just pop out of the house as well and give myself a bit of a change of scenery for the weekend. My quirk of classic car ownership for you today is that whilst the classic car scene can be really friendly and really lovely, there's also some not so nice aspects of it as well, and some of those is what I'm going to unfortunately want to address today. So hopefully you're here to kind of interact with my discussion about it and also maybe share some of your own experiences. So I'd like to kind of start today's podcast with a bit of a story. A friend of mine took their kind of pride and joy, their new car, well, new to them car obviously, to a local enthusiast that they'd heard about, who was quite clever in terms of the type of car that they'd bought, and was asking for a bit of advice. They were a young owner of a classic car, and they were looking to kind of get a little bit of help and advice about some issues that they'd kind of spotted with their new purchase. So they'd heard about this guy, so they'd taken their car along to them, and rather than kind of help, advice and guidance, which is what they'd gone for, they'd come back with a list as long as your arm of all these things that this enthusiast thought was kind of wrong with their car, and said that if I was going to help you with your car, I'd have to do everything to it. And unfortunately, being a young owner who just obviously put out probably quite a bit of money for the car, as well as quite a bit of money for insurance, what they wanted to do was kind of make slow and gradual improvements to things as they could and when they can afford. And that's generally what a lot of kind of young owners actually are looking to do, because you can't afford to do everything all at once when you're just starting out in this. And the kind of list of things that this guy had left my friend with was a long list of basically making the car exceptionally perfect, and it wasn't necessary really. Even like having seen the car myself now, there was lots of things that were on that list of things to do that my friend didn't need to do, because actually the paintwork, for example, that was brought up was perfectly alright, and actually the original paintwork, so it was only going to be original once. And I've been kind of fortunate actually that whilst Peggy's got a few flaws with her, any of the kind of garages and things that I've taken her to have been kind of quite friendly and helped me with what I needed to do, or anyone that I've asked for advice have been quite good in terms of just helping me with the thing that I'm asking for. But I know that some of that is because I've been steered clear of a few local classic garages that would do the kind of, oh well, it needs to have this and this and this and everything done before I'd kind of let it go out of here again, which is a real shame, because I'm of the opinion that these sorts of attitudes is contributing to a lot of what might kill the classic car industry. Like I've said, some of these people that kind of have these small little issues with their cars are going to be the young owners, which we've talked about before and you've probably seen endless conversations about, being the ones that we're struggling to kind of not only get in but keep in the classic car scene. But also they might just be new people. Some people might be in the car that they've dragged out of their parents' or their grandparents' garage not that long ago to kind of try and gradually get back on the road because they've got all these lovely memories of this car, and they want to kind of relive some of those memories, or they want to start out with this car that they've got this attachment to. And these sorts of cars aren't going to be perfect, but also if you're new to it, you're going to need to kind of gradually get help and information and things to help you out with getting that car to a usable standard at first, and then seeing where you kind of want to go from there. And you see, I'm not here to say that I wouldn't, as much as anybody, stand at a show and admire an absolutely perfect and flawless car that's got the faces of everyone who's looking at it reflected in its immaculate paintwork and its non-pitted chrome work, because those cars obviously took a lot of work. They're very deserving of a lot of attention. But equally, I think the classic car scene needs to also think about the cars that have got the stories and the kind of the little bits and tweaks wrong with them, the scars of being driven daily, for example, because those cars are equally important. The thing that I like to think about is, yes, that shiny car is going to look absolutely beautiful at the show, but that's possibly the only place that it's going to go that week or that month maybe, is to a show and sometimes on the back of a trailer. But myself, or other daily drivers, or other people that perhaps use their car as a bit of fun on a weekend or things like that, they're the cars that are going to be seen more regularly by people who perhaps aren't in the classic car scene. The amount of kids that wave and smile at my car when I drive to work past, I think I go past like 3 schools, and these are all kind of really important to kind of embedding the memory of these cars in other people's eyes, as well as people that are already interested in cars. It's also kind of encouragement for that person who perhaps sees your car out on a weekend and remembers that car that they know is buried in their parents' or grandparents' garage, and they think, well, actually I could get it out and I could enjoy that car as well. And so it's really important to be kind of supportive to everyone, and the attitudes that I've seen and I've heard from various people about kind of cars needing to be perfect, be immaculate, or don't take your car out in winter because of this and this that will happen to it. Well, yes, but also I think a really important thing to think about is that there's a lot of stuff attacking the classic car scene at the moment. We've got all this discussion about kind of going greener. We've got all this discussion about Ep10 and petrol changing and things like that. And it's not going to get any easier by any means for classic car owners. Just last week I was speaking about the future of transport regulatory review, which is another thing that's going to impact our cars. And really, we need to be banding together and working harder as a collective, rather than kind of missing out people because their car's not perfect, or because their car's modified. That's another area that we've seen in the past, modified and customs perhaps being relegated to separate parts of a show or separate things. There are elements of this starting to happen in the classic car scene. I know that some shows do kind of trophies like Wreck of the Rally and things like that, but it's also kind of important, I think, to maybe acknowledge some of those in the more middle ground. Those cars that are perhaps daily driven or used more frequently, or aren't kind of perfect but are living a life, or are still showing the kind of history of themselves on their paintwork or on their kind of chrome work and things like that. Another kind of anecdote along these lines that I think is quite unfortunate is that there was a show that I heard about that had been kind of long fought for, happening in the centre of a city, so that like kind of everyone would be passing by and there'd be this lovely display of cars, and it had been really long fought for, and there was kind of limited space. So I can see somewhat why organisers might think, well, let's get the absolute best cars that we can to really showcase what kind of the classic car scene can offer in terms of beautiful cars and things to a city. But actually, I feel that a non-car show event like that that's happening, where you're going to have regular folk kind of walking past and showing an interest in having a look around the cars, it's even more important to have a few of the cars that are perhaps more realistic as starter cars. Because if somebody goes to an event like that or unintentionally walks past the car, then they're going to see all these beautiful, immaculate cars and think that's the only car that's kind of welcome in that situation. So that they're going to go home and they might go on Facebook Marketplace, they might go on Auto Trader, and they might look up how much it is for them to own a car that's that immaculate and think, well, that's well out of my league, so that's not something that's going to be doable. Or they're going to look at what they kind of can afford and then think, well, it's going to be years before I get any support or help or interest from other people in the classic car scene for my car, so actually I'm not sure it's worth the effort and the time. So having perhaps a few more realistic cars at these sorts of events that are going to draw in the public and things. That's why, as much as I love going to classic car specific shows, I really like taking Peggy to kind of local fairs and things like that, so that as well as kind of the beautiful shiny cars that come out for those sorts of events, there's a car that perhaps people have seen locally. There was a local kind of little fair show in Whittlesea not that long ago, and that's a little town that I drive through quite frequently. And actually I was stood by kind of Peggy a little bit further away talking to a friend of mine, and whilst I was stood there I heard some kids actually come up and point at my car and say, oh, that's the one that we always see drive through, because she's got her kind of distinctive wheels, and she was actually she was the only Trafalgar Blue Morris Minor there actually, which is sometimes quite unusual for a Trafalgar Blue Morris Minor, and that meant that they kind of got this almost affinity of this car that they saw quite regularly drive through, perhaps on their walk to or from school, and they were really pleased to see it kind of out and about at a show and actually have a proper good look at it. And that was really quite a special moment for me, to have her kind of recognised in that way. So what am I saying? I'm saying that basically I'm concerned that too much perfectionism within some classic car scenes is essentially what's going to kill them off. I think there needs to be a much wider acceptance, encouragement, enjoyment of cars that have the odd thing wrong with them, at least aesthetically. If a car runs and it'll get you to places, then that's almost far more important than what it looks like on the outside, providing it's safe. And so I think there needs to be much more kind of appreciation of what these sorts of cars can do for the longevity of the car scene, because it's almost we're teetering on the edge of the end of being able to use our cars in every single way that we might want to. And so it's important to kind of just get out there and enjoy them a little bit. And if you're constantly scared to take your car out because of one thing happening to it or another, I know one of the first times I took Peggy out, I was of the opinion that her paintwork was really quite good. There's been some other issues raised since then, but I was so pleased and proud of it. And I remember the first time a stone chip came up at my screen, I cringed, because every car that I could kind of remember seeing at shows and things like that seemed so immaculate, so perfect, that there was no chance it was going to have stone chips and stuff in it. And I was really worried that actually the car that I'd bought to be able to kind of go to shows and to live in daily was now not going to be able to do that second part for me. And that really like panicked me a little bit, to be honest. But actually I'm really pleased that I've kind of got over that. And yes, there's the odd stone chip on her, there's also some bubbling and all sorts really happening, and I'm not worried in the same way that I was about kind of being scared to use her if damage could happen. Anyway, today's podcast has been a little bit rambly, but I hope you've been able to kind of grasp some of my thoughts and understandings about this topic, and maybe it's made you think a little bit about maybe how you perceive cars that you see at shows, or you've also got a story maybe about when you've also been treated differently because of how your car looks and things at shows. I'd love to hear from you in the comments about any of that, and I'll be back again next week, so make sure you're either following if you're listening to the audio, or subscribed if you're listening on YouTube. Drive safely and happy motoring.